Look over there. See that? That's a big plot of land. Steve is gonna build $1 million mansion there for me. I only have to pay $100,000. He's a doctor after all. Oh, from the perspective of you who wasn't loved by Steve, was it a tough story? Sorry.
I had no words for my talkative ex-husband's new wife. Indeed, a mansion is about to be built on that wide piece of land visible from this cafe. Given the proximity of this land to both the station and the downtown area, it's worth $1 million. But such a thing is impossible for Steve, my ex-husband. 'Cause Steve is... My name is Lucy. I've been dealing with sleepless nights caused by stress. The source of the stress is my husband, Steve. I had an arranged marriage with Steve, who was 10 years older than me. At the time, I was single and Steve wanted to marry me, so I agreed. The fact that my parents wanted me to marry Steve was a big reason. Steve, a doctor, makes more money than most people. That was his pride, and it gave him confidence. However, when he let loose on me, his wife, that pride and confidence turned completely high-handed.
What's this? At least make my favorite dish for dinner.
But if you keep eating only your favorites, it's bad for your health.
No, it's not.
Disapproving of the dinner I prepared as soon as he came home was Steve's routine. He reluctantly ate my dishes, but sometimes when he was in a bad mood, he'd throw away the meal I had prepared right in front of me. And then he would tell me to order takeout and go off to take a bath, leaving me wiping away my tears and dialing his favorite restaurants for delivery time and time again. You may think I should have divorced him, but my parents' expectations weighed heavily on me. My parents were money-loving people who were desperate to transform their own poor lives into something more affluent. That's why they connected with the wealthy and arranged for Steve and me to get married.
Lucy marrying Steve was really a blessing. Steve sometimes gives us a little money too, so Lucy needs to endure any minor issues and carry on with your life. Don't abandon the golden ticket over a little complaint about dinner.
Those were the kinds of things they said when I complained about Steve.
I loved my parents and didn't need money. Despite this, when I realized that for my parents I was merely a tool to find a wealthy person, I lost sense of my self-worth. Since then, I've been suffering from chronic sleep issues. Even when I get into bed, it takes me at least 2 hours to fall asleep. And just when I think I've gotten some sleep in the early morning, the alarm clock I set to prepare breakfast goes off. Steve gets in a bad mood if he doesn't have his favorite breakfast, so I have to get up early. I tried napping in the afternoon once, but when Steve, who happened to come home early from work, found me sleeping, he yelled at me, "What's the matter with you?" Just loafing around as a housewife, and since then, napping became a source of fear. The lack of sleep was draining my physical strength and the stress weighing on my heart. My body and mind, having endured those hard days, broke down all of a sudden one day. I really learned for the first time in my life that the human mind and body can suddenly break down. Coming back from shopping, I was walking home when suddenly my legs stopped and I couldn't move. I was so dizzy that I couldn't even stand up. My breathing became shallow, and just when I was about to be crushed by the desire to disappear, I had a fortuitous encounter.
Are you okay? Should I call an ambulance? The young woman who happened to be walking the same path and who helped me when I suddenly crashed down was a girl named Jessica.
She was beautiful and looked intelligent, which was my first impression. She really helped me by stroking my back as I was becoming hyperventilated and telling me, "Focus on exhaling, it's okay. I'm here with you." Once I was finally able to calm down, I thanked Jessica many times while feeling that it had been a while since someone had helped me.
Jessica laughed and said, "I didn't do anything worth all those thanks, but I was so grateful that I wanted to thank her, so I exchanged contact information with Jessica."
When I asked if there was anything I could do, Jessica thought for a moment and then said, "Well, there's a cafe I've been curious about, so please come with me next time." I used to enjoy cafe hopping when I was single, and I had been to the cafe that Jessica said she was interested in. Of course, I agreed to go with her, and later I went to the cafe with Jessica and ate pancakes. When Jessica said delicious, while holding her cheeks that looked like they were about to fall, she looked so cute. And even though she wasn't as beautiful, it reminded me of myself before I got married to Steve. I was working as an office worker, engaged in product development and leading fulfilling days. I wasn't interested in marriage at all, and was fully immersed in work, always thinking about what kind of product would make our customers happy. Some products that I developed became the flagship products of our company. The product that I mainly developed has become the company's flagship product. I've even received recognition from the CEO, and work was truly my passion in life. However, Steve had a mindset that if a wife was working, it reflected that the husband couldn't afford to provide for her. Thus, I reluctantly had to abandon my job. Jessica was a girl with an enigmatic aura, and as we grew closer and met a few times, I found myself divulging into my sleepless nights, my love for work, and how my marital life with Steve was a painful struggle. I figured that hearing such bleak stories would make Jessica uncomfortable. That's what I thought. But Jessica listened to me seriously without showing a single unpleasant expression. Then she gifted me a revelation. "Why don't you just run away, Lucy? From your husband and from your parents. You are kind and you've been trying to meet their expectations, but remember, we only have one life. It's a waste of time to spend it trying to meet others' expectations. You're talented, Lucy. You should live your life for yourself." Her words hit me like a lightning bolt. It was okay to escape. That option had somehow vanished from my mind. What would happen if I ran away? My parents would be disappointed, and I might be left stranded with no job. These anxieties flashed through my mind, but Jessica's words, "You should live your life for yourself," pushed me forward. And I presented Steve with divorce papers.
As usual, Steve was ready to nitpick about my cooking after work, but as he said, "Huh? What about dinner?"
While looking at the table, he saw the divorce papers and his eyes widened.
I calmly told him I want a divorce.
Although the fearful part of me was trembling inside, Jessica's words held me up. Of course, the prideful Steve shouted, raged, and berated me, but I held my ground on the divorce. In his rage, Steve filled out the divorce papers. Taking the completed divorce papers, I immediately submitted them to the city office and moved into an apartment I rented using my savings from before marriage. Steve, of course, informed my parents of this. My parents kept calling and shouting, "You ungrateful child! Apologize to Steve right now and fix the relationship." They texted me a lot, even on WhatsApp, but I blocked them all and severed ties with my parents. They had raised me, but when they started seeing me as only a money tree, they became nothing but obstacles in my life. The guilt of abandoning my parents made me sleepless again, but I was determined to take care of my life and never wavered. One day, while enjoying our cafe hopping routine, I told Jessica about running away from Steve and severing ties with my parents.
She congratulated me, saying, "Congrats," and didn't let me pay for anything at the cafe on that day. She secretly ordered a cake at the cafe, saying, "This is a celebration," and presented it to me. Her kindness brought tears to my eyes.
After breaking free from my domineering husband and parents who saw their daughter as nothing more than a money tree, I spent some time healing both my mind and body. I might have looked like a jobless dump, but I felt this time was necessary for me. I spent my days reading books I liked, watching movies, and sometimes just daydreaming at the local park. These slow, relaxing times gradually but surely healed my body and soul. But one day, out of the blue, I got a call from a number I didn't know. At the time, I had just begun to apply for jobs, so I thought it might be a call from one of the companies I had interviewed with, and decided to answer. A young woman's voice was on the other end of the line.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Steve's new wife. My name is Catherine. Could you maybe meet at a cafe I'm about to mention? I'd like to talk to you a bit."
I couldn't help but say, "Huh?" But she kept talking. Catherine was apparently Steve's new wife, only 23 years old. Steve was more than a decade older than her, which shocked me. But Catherine clearly admitted she married him for the money. It seemed Steve had been making advances toward Catherine, who had been a nurse at his hospital since the time he was still married to me. Catherine had been welcoming Steve's advances, and I had no clue, but it turned out they had been having an affair since we were married. But things changed when Steve and I divorced. Steve had promised Catherine that she could spend as much money as she wanted if she married him. even going so far as to say he would give her $100,000 upon their marriage. Catherine, who had been having an affair with Steve just for fun, was blinded by the money and quit her job as a nurse to marry Steve. She was planning to take the money and leave him soon after, but apparently Steve treated her much better than she had expected, and Catherine decided to continue their married life. So Catherine, who got my phone number from Steve, contacted me and had the audacity to ask me to tell her all about Steve. Of course I refused, and although Catherine seemed angry, I didn't care. I was supposed to meet Jessica the next day, and when I told her about the call from Catherine, Jessica said something surprising. "Why don't you meet her? I'll come with you." She figured Catherine wouldn't say anything outrageous if it was 2 against 1. While I was unsure why I needed to meet Catherine, Jessica reassured me, saying, "It's okay. I will absolutely protect you, Lucy." So I decided to meet Catherine. Although she did not ask about my change of mind, Catherine cheerfully said, "Great, let's meet at this cafe," and even specified the place. She hung up after saying she would make a reservation at a cafe in downtown. Though she seemed flighty, I went to meet Catherine with Jessica, and Catherine didn't seem to mind me bringing Jessica along. From there it was Catherine's show. She kept talking about how much Steve loved her, and how much money she was getting from him. She laughed as she said, "I never thought I'd marry an older man, but it's not too bad." She wanted to know about Steve's favorite foods, cooking, his past, and so on. All I wanted was to get away from her, so I just responded to her questions. In the meantime, it was kind of scary to see Jessica's beautiful face disappear and stare at Catherine. Catherine even noticed Jessica's mood, to which she exclaimed, "Speaking of which," and pointed out the window at the coffee shop. "Look over there, can you see it? That large plot of land? Steve is building a mansion worth $1 million here. I only have to pay $100,000. Doctors sure have it good, huh?" "Oh, was it hard for you to hear that from a woman who wasn't loved by Steve?" "Sorry about that. I lost my words by her story. Indeed, a mansion seems to be being built on the large plot of land visible from this cafe. With the station and downtown so close, it's likely to cost $1 million. But for Steve, such a thing is impossible. How is Steve gonna do that? He's unemployed." My softly uttered question leaves Catherine saying, "Huh?" with a puzzled voice. Unaware, Catherine insists Steve is a doctor, isn't he? Shaking my head, I refute. "No, Steve's not a doctor anymore. He was indeed a doctor, but I heard he got fired. After my divorce from Steve, I heard from acquaintances that he had made a medical error and got fired." On hearing this, Catherine displays a shocked expression, saying, "Are you kidding?" revealing she wasn't told that Steve was fired. As I am astounded by this, the silent Jessica finally speaks up. "Catherine, you're being deceived. That mansion is definitely not a house for you and Steve." Duh? With Catherine still dazed, Jessica goes on to make an outrageous claim. "That house is being built for Lucy by me. Your husband is not a doctor, but a con man."
He seems to be particularly good at marriage fraud, getting involved with various women and swindling money from them.
Without any emotion, Jessica brings out an envelope from the bag she brought and hands it over to Catherine. Catherine takes the envelope and cries out, "No way!" dropping the envelope on the table. From it spills out photos of Steve spending time with various women. But what intrigues me more is Jessica's statement that the mansion was built for me.
Jessica, could you explain what you mean?
Jessica proceeds to explain to me and Catherine, who are upset. As it turns out, Jessica, not wanting me to be overwhelmed, kept it a secret that she was the CEO of a well-known major corporation. Jessica seems to have thought I have a talent for product development and wanted to hire me. She thought her intentions might not get across just by saying she wanted to hire me, so she had built that mansion as a gift with the intention of hiring me. In addition, Jessica wondered if she could somehow take revenge on Steve, who made me suffer, and she used the credit bureau. It turns out that Steve is a fraudster. Having brought evidence today and reported it, she says Steve might be getting arrested by now. The fact that Catherine thought the mansion Jessica had built for me was her house was just a coincidence. It was one of the lies that Steve told Catherine.
Catherine, turning pale, starts to tremble and says, "So he only tricked me out of $100,000? Even though we're married?"
Well, you see, it seems that Steve was able to swindle $100,000 from you, and he was planning to divorce you soon. We have some audio evidence recorded by a private investigator. Would you like to hear it?
As Jessica said that, Catherine cried out, "I don't want to hear it," and ran out of the coffee shop.
I was left there in a daze, but then Jessica started to make her pitch to me. She earnestly asked me to showcase my talents in the product development department of her company, and I was truly delighted to hear it. I told her that even without such a luxury mansion, I would have gladly worked with her if she had asked, to which Jessica laughed and said, "You see, I have a habit of spoiling others." Later, it seems that Steve really was arrested and Catherine divorced him. Catherine, who thought she could live a rich life, seemed to have used her credit card for a lot of shopping and ended up in debt to pay for it. As for me, in the product development department, I developed a bed mat for those suffering from sleeplessness. That bed mat became a hit and my career took off smoothly. I am gradually paying Jessica back with the money I got from selling the luxury mansion. Sleeping on the bed mat I developed in the mansion, my past struggles with sleeplessness feel like a lie. I'm enjoying my work and cherishing every day with my friend Jessica. I am truly enjoying this one and only life I have. I have nothing but gratitude for Jessica, who reminded me at that time of the option to run away